and welcome to another episode of PKBinspire. In my last video where I shared my next professional move that I had joined Google, I got some comments from many of you asking what are some of the tips that I can give into preparing for your Google interview. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you 4 tips that can help you ace your Google interviews. The very first tip that I have for you is whenever you see the job description, spend considerable amount of time to ensure that the requirements of the job description matches your professional experience. Many times, the requirements of the job may not necessarily fit your professional experience, and that is okay. There's always the opportunity to look for other roles that would directly fit your experience. There is, however, a caveat to this rule. You see, there is no job description that would 100% match your professional experience. And so I have a personal rule of thumb that whenever I see a job description for which I am about 70 to 90% qualified for, I'll take a chance on myself and apply anyway. I mean, what is the worst that can happen? The worst is you don't get an interview, but you at least took a chance on yourself. The number 2 tip is that always do your research, both about the role and the company that you are applying for. In this case, we are looking at Google. So it is quite easy to get the needed information online. You can just do a Google search about the role. In some cases, you'd be fortunate enough to even have an idea of who the hiring manager is. In other cases, that is also not possible, but that is fine. Do your research about the role. If there is any aspect of the job description that you are not sure about, always go online and do an extensive research of any technical requirement that is needed for the role. By conducting your own personal research, what happens is that it boosts your confidence about the requirements for that particular job that you're trying to apply for at Google. Another aspect of your research that is absolutely crucial is that you need to find out exactly how much they are going to pay for that role. Ordinarily, you will not find this information when you visit the Google career website. However, you could use websites like Glassdoor to find comparable roles and to better understand the range of salaries that you are potentially to get for the role. So now you are ready to apply for the job. Make sure that you update your CV to reflect exactly what the job is trying to look for. Remember that not every experience might be relevant on your CV for that specific job. The rule of thumb here is that do not use a generic CV to apply for your role at Google. According to the Google Careers website, a cover letter in most cases is not required. It is really optional and up to you. But personally, I would advise you to write a good cover letter. Again, in this instance, don't upload a generic cover letter. Try as much as possible to carve your cover letter to suit the specific job that you're applying for. Let your cover letter tell your story, the story about your professional journey. And that journey should be intriguing, exciting, and should reflect that you're someone who is curious to explore new opportunities. You should also highlight your strengths and a bit of your achievement. Also, try to reflect your leadership qualities in your cover letter. Now you have uploaded all the documents, your cover letter and your CV. What really happens next? In the fortunate event that your application is suitable, there are 4 key steps that happen afterwards. The first step is that you get a call with the recruiter. This is usually about 30 to 35 minutes call. In this call, it's really more like a get to know kind of call. It's very relaxed and quite informal. The recruiter would want to understand who you are, what has been your professional journey, essentially a summary of your key milestones in your professional journey. This would usually give the recruiter an idea of who you are and the key strengths that you bring to the role. So in the past, before COVID, you would be invited over to a physical location, and then you have your on-site interviews. These days, the interviews are virtual. So I had my on-site virtually. This constituted a back-to-back set of interviews. And I remember I had mine, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. So this is more or less like the core of the interview process. The on-site usually constitutes about 4 to 5 sets of interviews, each one lasting between 30 to 45 minutes. And usually you would have a combination of questions that is being thrown at you. I would share a little bit more on what to look out for. The third stage usually depends on the kind of role that you're applying for. Normally, software engineers go through some form of team matching, process as well, where they would interview with a potential team that they are going to be working with. In my case, I didn't have that. So it's not applicable to everyone. What happens next is that, let's say you finish your on-site and all your interviews. Then there's the hiring committee. This is usually an internal group of experts who would review your application, coupled with the interview feedback from the interviewers who interviewed you. So if all goes well and the hiring committee gives a thumbs up, then you would have your recruiter reaching back to you to either give you an offer and essentially negotiate on what the final package would be. And after that, you start your job at Google. The next step to ace this stage of the process is use a mental model when you're answering especially open-ended and behavioral questions. You need to practice behavioral questions. These are questions that usually would want to test your ability to respond to a situation. And that situation could be negative or positive. It could be proactive or reactive. Whatever the case may be, you need to have a mental model. The mental model that I used for my interview is the STAR model. The STAR model helps you to structure how you're going to answer your questions, especially the behavioral and open-ended questions. STAR model, STAR. The S stands for situation. The T stands for task. The A stands for action. And the R stands for result. I have decided to add, a fifth, which is lessons learned. So whenever you are given an open-ended question or a behavioral question, try as much as possible to use this mental model to answer your question. For example, you are asked, tell me about a time when you had some misalignment or disagreement with your manager. To answer this question, you need to structure what your response is going to be using the STAR model. One important tip that I have is that don't be in a haste to always answer the questions immediately, especially for open-ended questions. Always ask clarifying questions back to the interviewer. This way, you are able to fully understand key assumptions to the question, and you're able to understand what are potential constraints in answering that question. Now, going back to the example that I gave, using the STAR model, you use the first thing is to describe the situation. So the question is about a conflict or a misalignment with your manager. you need to create what the situation is or explain what the situation is. And what is the context within which that conflict occurred? T, what is or was the task at hand? A, what actions did you take? And R, what results accrued at the end? And of course, the fifth bonus one is what were the lessons learned. The next tip that I would like to share for you for the interview stage is Google is very much data-driven. So as much as possible, do not give vague, hypothetical answers. You need to drive your responses with good data. For example, if you are able to contribute to sales in a particular year, you need to understand what exactly is the sales number, and you need to give that sales number. If you contributed to reducing waste in your company, by what percentage are we referring to? This is crucial because that way we are able to, or the interviewer is able to understand the empirical data that is backing whatever achievement that you are trying to explain. The last but one tip is that with open-ended questions, you need to understand there is no right or wrong answer. The interviewer is essentially trying to understand how you analyze a situation and how you solve a problem. And so my tip here is that when you are given an open-ended question, one, you need to ask some clarifying questions to the interviewer to understand the constraints and the assumptions that you are making. But the more important thing is that whilst you are trying to answer, try as much as possible to speak out your thought process. You know, there's a temptation to think your thought process and only speak the final solution that you have. No, don't do that. With open-ended questions, try to speak out your thinking process. Let the interviewer hear you thinking out your assumptions, the processes you're trying to use to arrive at the final solution or answer. This way, you are able to kind of make your thinking process quite open. And if the interviewer has any follow-up questions based on what assumptions you are making, they are able to ask. My last and final tip for your Google interview is try to do some practice run with your friends, your loved ones, or people in your close circle. This is absolutely crucial. It gives you some level of confidence going into the actual interviews. I personally had several hours of mock interviews with some good friends of mine, Casey and Frank Ribeiro, Harry Davis. They really spent time to take me through potential questions, and then we timed ourselves. They would ask me questions and I would try to answer. And then at the end of the session, they gave me feedback on areas that I need to improve on. This is super, super crucial. I would advise that don't just go into the interview without any practice runs. This is really important. So I thought I'll give some bonus tips here. Your interview would be in 4 different areas. In other words, Google will be looking out for these 4 key things. The first area is what we call GCA, General Cognitive Ability. In the General Cognitive Ability, you would usually get open-ended questions. So this is where all the open-ended questions would come from. The idea, again, is to understand how you analyze situations, the process, your thinking process to arriving at a solution, and not necessarily the solution itself. So with GCA, usually there's no right or wrong answers. The next area is leadership. So you need to remember to highlight your key leadership capabilities. This includes your ability to collaborate, to lead and champion some projects, your ability to communicate with key stakeholders in delivering projects and so forth. The third area is what we call the RRK, the role-related knowledge. So the role-related knowledge will be looking out for your specific skill set, your capabilities and abilities for the specific job or role that you're applying for. And the fourth area is what we call Googliness. So essentially, Googliness is like how you're able to work with others, your ability to, work within the team context, your ability to kind of show empathy even for other people, your colleagues, for even your clients, your customers, and so forth. Another crucial aspect of Googliness is your ability to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. It's like going beyond what is expected of you, as well as your ability to navigate ambiguity. Because you would find out that due to the complexity of the kind of project you'll be working on at Google, you need to have the ability to navigate ambiguity, where there's not much data to make a decision. What would be the process that you would follow to actually deliver on whatever deliverables that is required of you? One important resource that really helped me when I was preparing for my interviews was a YouTube channel by 𝙧𝙚𝙨𝙚𝙨. He's a fantastic YouTuber. He used to be a Google recruiter himself for I think 5 or 6 years. And now he has a YouTube channel where he shares free tips and potential mock questions that you could practice with. I highly recommend that you visit Jeff's YouTube channel. I'll try to link his YouTube channel in the description. Try as much as possible to watch all the videos. I watched every single video. I practiced all the mental models that he shared and the practice questions that he also shares on his website. I do hope that you found this video useful, and I wish for those of you who are applying or preparing for your Google interviews, I wish you the very best and good luck in your job search. I'll catch you again in the next episode of PKBinspire. Bye-bye.
Ice in my veins, I've been driving this train.